Hello and welcome to the review of Three-Body Problem and proof that the problem can be solved. As of March 27th of 2024, Three-Body Problem has become the second most watched TV series in the world. Now science will tell you that the three-body problem is unsolvable because of uncertainty. Considering the TV series started originally as a Chinese science fiction story, I could not help but wonder, what could it be that makes this story so popular, and why could anyone say anything is unsolvable, especially when it comes to science? Now, I could dig into the show from a why perceptional perspective, like analyzing the actors, producers, and so on, but that would give us the tendency to disagree, because the mind would judge my opinion and have the tendency to look for a reason to be defensive, the negative first perspective. So please allow me to reflect on the three-body problem from more of a pure truth understanding, basically asking how instead of trying to figure out the why to explain what it is about this series that has drawn so many viewers. Let's start by reviewing this from a scientific perspective and then analyzing how this story actually gravitates towards us on a much deeper level. Science describes it as the relationship of three bodies like planets, stars, or even humans, trapped in each other's gravity. Simply put, if three objects of comparable size and distance from the center point in space have gravitational pull towards each other, the system is thrown into chaos. So let's think about chaos. Chaos is when one body is always expelled while the other two form a binary system. And the five fundamental truths of chaos are defined as inherent repetition of patterns, the patterns which repeat themselves generation to generation, if you will. Self-organization, which is recognized as non-equilibrium or out of balance. Interconnectedness, and that is the non-physical bond between two different items or people. Self-similarity, which is perceived as exactly or approximately similar to part of itself or how it relates to others. And constant feedback loops. This is created when all or at least some portion of the output is fed back into the input and retained. Think of it as memory. By now you're beginning to understand how the three-body problem directly relates to our human existence. So allow me to explain the binary system because it is defined as involving a choice between two alternatives only, such as on-off, yes-no, or positive and negative. But the three-body problem connects to us on a much deeper level. Think about the beginning of your life. You have your mother, your father, and yourself. Recognize that the ones closest to you have the greatest influence on your ability to stay in peace or to gravitate towards chaos. When a child is born, it perceives the world as a good place. But then we see our parents stressed, tired, angry, upset, or irritated. This causes us to feel fear or guilt. We begin to experience the negative energy, and in return, it creates negative thought patterns within our mind. But as we grow, or we can think of it as gaining mass, we begin to distance ourselves from the negative influences and gain independence. And the more space we gain between, the more we feel as if we're moving towards our true self. But we realize that the independence did not solve the three-body problem because it takes place individually through mind, body, and spirit conflict. Think of it as the mind is the gravitational pull or the negative. This is constantly keeping us in a state of chaos. We know that negativity comes from the mind's perception of life by causing stress, and stress impacts our health. Stress can destroy our body's hormones, impair our immune system, and drain our positive brain chemicals. Negative energy in the form of anger can even cause dysfunction in the heart and ultimately kill our body. Think of a placebo. But it does not stop there. Negative energy also affects us spiritually by keeping us always in the defensive mode. But the good news is it is not our fault unless we choose to ignore our ability to remove the negativity. The truth is our mind operates on a negative first perspective as a way of protecting our body from potential dangers. Our predisposition for paying attention to negative rather than positive is an evolutionary hand-me-down from our cave-dwelling ancestors. Back then, alertness to danger, aka the bad stuff, the negative, was a matter of life and death. But now we have the ability to live life by the positive first perspective. The positive first perspective gives us the ability to know what will happen in the future. Think of it as predicting the future. So when it comes to predicting the future, we can't help but recognize all of our current technologies that came from science fiction. We have the internet, tasers, cloning, human bionics, atomic power, cell phone, computers, AI, and the list goes on and on. Now let's compare how science fiction predicted the future of humans. And there's no better way of doing that than comparing us to Mr. Spock. Now Spock had the ability to mind meld, which we now call cognitive empathy or empathic accuracy. He had the Vulcan nerve pinch, and in MMA, it's referred to as the vagus nerve pressure point. He had a genius IQ and unwavering logic. So how can we obtain the same traits? The first thing we need to recognize is that Spock had very limited emotions. He only showed love and interest in what another person was saying. He felt only the positive emotions. Psychology refers to Spock as having Asperger's or autism. Now stop and think of how so many geniuses have been considered to have autistic traits. The truth is, while they have very high cognitive and intellectual skills like working memory, analytical thinking, and knowledge retention, they have a lower than average emotional intelligence, referred to as EQ. EQ measures our social skills and emotional abilities, including cognitive empathy, emotional regulation, and motivation. Now, I could explain how to quickly achieve a genius IQ or EQ, but I will save that for future videos. So let's proceed by solving the three-body problem from the scientific perspective. And how do we do that? By understanding it from the positive first perspective. In order to understand from the positive first perspective, we must recognize the negative within the three-body problem. And the negative is that we perceive it as a problem in the first place. The negative first perspective. So how do we find the positive in a problem, or in this case, chaos? We do it by choosing to accept it as reality, instead of perceiving it as a problem. Once we accept reality, we obtain equilibrium through understanding, which is the how. And equilibrium is a state without chaos. So to solve the scientific three-body problem, you simply reflect on the stars and planets as truth, and truth is They directly relate to human experience. After all, do you think it's coincidence that there are more firing neurons in the brain than we perceive there to be stars and planets in the universe? Or that stars and planets have always given direction for where humans need to go? Or that the phases of the moon affect the human experience? Just watch what happens in the upcoming total eclipse. The truth is, if we reflect on the universe from a mirror image perspective, the positive first perspective, we gain the understanding of the human existence. Stop and think. Is it coincidence that historical religious writings refer to as stars and planets? That the pyramids do this as well? Now, let us think about the 7 wonders of the world. But I will explain the truths within all religions in future videos. So now allow me to explain how we solve the 3-body problem within our individual self. We must first recognize the highlights, the unique side, the positive. Then we allow ourselves to gracefully reflect on the memories. We allow ourselves to recognize the negative memories, the chaos. Next, we reflect on the negative memories. Now, I know that me simply saying reflect on negative memories triggered the defensive mode in most of us. So please allow me to explain how we can reflect without having to experience more negativity. We achieve this by doing it the same way Spock or other geniuses do it, and that is by acknowledging the emotion that your mind has created as a way of protecting you from experiencing the negativity again, the problem. And once we have put it into the chaos, we learn from the experience. Once we've learned from the experience, then we have gained understanding, the how, the reality. And the negative memory becomes neutral, which means it no longer is a problem, the negative. And the knowledge that we gain from our experience is the positive truth. It reduces down to all experiences in our life are positive once we remove the emotion that the mind has created to protect you, which reduces down to once we stop feeling sorry for ourselves, we change to the positive first perspective, we literally can solve all the problems of our world. Because the truth is, the only problems in the world are simply because we perceived them as a problem in the first place, which is the negative first perspective. Now, for us methodical thinkers, the equation would be stated as to find reality, you must first recognize the negative, find the square root of the negative, and then allow the negative to recognize itself. And then all things become positive, and that is living reality on reality's terms, which reduces down to consciousness, which gives us the only one real truth. And for those of us that recognize the spirit, the soul, we can reduce it down to divine spirit within, the positive energy, which can be referred to as God within. Stop and think how we have just bridged the space between science and spirituality. We can now see our existence as one. Do you think it is coincidence that negative atmospheric pressure clouds our view, but positive atmospheric pressure allows us to see clearly? Do you think it's coincidence that it was once written, when Jesus was born, a star appeared, and the 3 wise men followed it to find the Son of Man? Once you see the light, the pure truth, you realize that it is everywhere, to the point of knowing the future. The way we solve all the problems within humanity is by changing our perspective within our own mind, by removing all the negative energy. Only then can we find harmony, the equilibrium, the light. If you have understood the truth in what I am saying, Please try this approach in all walks of your life immediately, because I know that it can literally solve all the problems in your world, simply by changing to the positive first perspective. Do you think it's coincidence that the only person we have ever heard about was willing to die to teach us how to remove all the negative energy from within? And that he said, "And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free"? Now stop and think about hell. It is referred to as a prisoner of your own guilt, and that reduces down to a prisoner of your own negative. And once the negative recognizes itself, all things become positive and it no longer exists. As my channel continues, I will be teaching how to find all the truths, but I cannot help unless you're willing to listen. If you see the truths, all the lies stick out like a sore thumb. Thank you for listening, and please remember, the positive in me loves the positive in you. Sleep well.